You think I'm late, don't you? I am gonna fight for this lost cause until the people rise up and get rid of your party conventions and your political machines and once again have a voice, a voice, a voice, a voice.
It seems that TransDigm sold a part called a non-vehicular clutch disc. You have to excuse how small the image is here, but it's up there on that screen. But it would, if I blew it up much larger, it wouldn't even be to scale because this disc is only about 3 inches anyway. A pair of jeans can cost $32. Imagine paying over $1,000 for that. But the good news here is that what I've found is that the cost of about 149 of these clutch discs will cost, at cost, is about $4,768, except TransDigm charged the public $215,007. That is a margin of about $210,239. Mr. Howley, are you aware how many doses of insulin we could get for that margin?
I'm not.
In a single payer healthcare system, an insulin dose can cost about $137 a vial. I could have gotten over 1,500 people insulin for the cost of the margin of your price gouging for these vehicular discs alone. The incidence of diabetes, according to the CDC, is about 7 people in 1,000, which means I could have covered the insulin costs of a community of 21,400 people for the cost of your price gouging of the public on a non-vehicular clutch disc alone. I could have sent 21 kids to college. I could have sent 18 toddlers to free preschool for a year in the most expensive city in America. So my question to you is, why should we give you another dime?
It seems to me the government always has the choice of what to buy and what not to buy from us. We believe that we provide the government with well-designed, well-manufactured, high-quality product. We deliver it in a timely fashion, and we support it when there's a problem.
How much competition do you have? How many competitors do you have in this market?
We have I don't know this individual part, just because we make 200,000 parts, but I would say there's almost no product we make where there aren't other alternatives to buy the part.
But it could be one alternative, 2 alternatives, or 1,000 alternatives.
Not 1,000.
Not 1,000.
Some number of alternatives.
So
we
it's
are
not
almost
a
always
perfectly
selected originally in a competitive process when the airplane's designed, where we're selected because of our price, our technology, our delivery, our contract terms, whatever.
You know, I find this interesting because this term free market comes up very often, but I don't think people really understand what that means, because so often it's not a free market at all. It's a captive market. It's one where we're forced to choose between 2 to 3 people. Oftentimes in these processes, there is significant argument and there's significant evidence that there's collusion in these markets, that it's not a perfectly competitive market, because a perfectly competitive market requires a large amount of competitors. Today is my lucky day because for ages, we're consistently told that single-payer healthcare is too expensive. We're told constantly, how are you going to pay for it? How are you going to pay for covering the insulin costs of everyday Americans? And I seem to have found part of my answer here today. Thank you, Chair. So let's play a game. Let's play a lightning round game. I'm going to be the bad guy, which I'm sure half the room would agree with anyway. And I want to get away with as much bad things as possible, ideally to enrich myself and advance my interest, even if that means putting my interests ahead of the American people. So, Mrs. Hobart Flynn. Oh, and by the way, I have enlisted all of you as my co-conspirators. So you're going to help me legally get away with all of this. So, Mrs. Hobart Flynn, I want to run. If I want to run a campaign that is entirely funded by corporate political action committees, is there anything that legally prevents me from doing that?
No.
Okay, so there's nothing stopping me from being entirely funded by corporate PACs, say from the fossil fuel industry, the healthcare industry, big pharma. I'm entirely 100% lobbyist PAC funded. Okay, so let's say I'm a really, really bad guy, and let's say I have some skeletons in my closet that I need to cover up so that I can get elected. Mr. Smith, is it true that you wrote this article, this opinion piece for the Washington Post entitled, "These payments to women were unseemly, that doesn't mean they were illegal"?
Well, I can't see the piece, but I wrote a piece under that headline in the Post, so I assume that's right.
Okay, great. So, green light for hush money. I can do all sorts of terrible things. It's totally legal right now for me to pay people off. And that is considered speech. That money is considered speech. So I use my special interest dark money funded campaign to pay off folks that I need to pay off and get elected. So now I'm elected, now I'm in, I've got the power to draft, lobby, and shape the laws that govern the United States of America. Fabulous. Now, is there any hard limit that I have, perhaps Mrs. Hobart Flynn, is there any hard limit that I have in terms of what legislation I'm allowed to touch? Are there any limits on the laws that I can write or influence, especially if I'm based on the special interest funds that I accepted to finance my campaign and get me elected in the first place?
There's no limit.
So there's none. So I can be totally funded by oil and gas. I can be totally funded by Big Pharma, come in, write Big Pharma laws, and there's no limits to that whatsoever.
That's right.
Okay, so awesome. Now, Mr. Mirabani, the last thing I want to do is get rich with as little work possible. That's really what I'm trying to do as the bad guy, right? So is there anything preventing me from holding stocks, say, in an oil or gas company, and then writing laws to deregulate that industry and cause, that could potentially cause the stock value to soar and accrue a lot of money in that time?
You could do that.
So I could do that. I could do that now with the way our current laws are set up. Yes?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, so my last question is, or one of my last questions, I guess I'd say, is it possible that any elements of this story apply to our current government and our current public servants right now?
Yes.
Yes.
So we have a system that is fundamentally broken. We have these influences existing in this body, which means that these influences are here in this committee shaping the questions that are being asked of you all right now. Would you say that that's correct,
Yes.
Mr. Marabani or Mr. Schaub?
Yes.
All right, so one last thing, Mr. Schaub. In relation to congressional oversight that we have, the limits that are placed on me as a congresswoman, compared to the executive branch and compared to, say, the President of the United States, would you say that Congress has the same sort of standard of accountability? Is there more teeth in that regulation in Congress on the President, or would you say it's about even or more so on the federal?
In terms of laws that apply to the president, yeah, there's just almost no laws at all that apply to the president.
So I'm being held, and every person in this body is being held to a higher ethical standard than the President of the United States.
That's right, because there are some ethics committee rules that apply to you.
And it's already super legal, as we've seen, for me to be a pretty bad guy. So it's even easier for the President of the United States to be one, I would assume.
That's right.
Thank you very much.
You just can't keep making your own laws. There's got to be one set of laws fair for everyone, including you.
That's fine. When that set of laws is fairly applied to everyone, then I'll turn the other cheek, too.
There's got to be a better way to change those people.
Change those people. You worked with King, didn't you?
Yes,
Where is he?
Dad.
And where's Bob and Jack Kennedy?
Dad.
Not dead. Their brains blown out. Because your people wouldn't even put the same controls on their guns as they do on their dogs, their bicycles, their cats, and their automobiles.
I don't care about all that. I just don't want you to go out and commit murder. Please, Billy, please. We'll go someplace else, someplace where it doesn't have to be like this.
Oh, really? Well, tell me, where is that place? Where is it? In what remote corner of this country, no, the entire goddamn planet, is there such a place where men really care about another and really love each other? Now, you tell me where such a place is, and I promise you that I'll never hurt another human being as long as I live. Just one place. That's what I thought.
This is not an elitist issue. This is a quality of life issue. You want to tell people that their concern and their desire for clean air and clean water is elitist? Tell that to the kids in the South Bronx, which are suffering from the highest rates of childhood asthma in the country. Tell that to the families in Flint, whose kids have their blood is ascending in lead levels. Their brains are damaged for the rest of their lives. Call them elitist. You're telling them that those kids are trying to get on a plane to Davos? People are dying. They are dying. And the response across the other side of the aisle is to introduce an amendment 5 minutes before a hearing in a markup. This is serious. This should not be a partisan issue. This is about our constituents and all of our lives. Iowa, Nebraska, broad swaths of the Midwest are drowning right now, underwater. Farms, towns that will never be recovered and never come back. And we're here and people are more concerned about helping oil companies than helping their own families? I don't think so. I don't think so. This is about our lives. This is about American lives. And it should not be partisan. Science should not be partisan. We are facing a national crisis. And if we do not ascend to that crisis, if we do not ascend to the levels in which we were threatened at the Great Depression, when we were threatened in World War II, if we do not ascend to those levels, if we tell the American public that we are more willing to invest and bail out big banks than we are willing to invest in our farmers and our urban families, then I don't know what we're here doing. I don't know what we're here doing. That the government knew that climate change was real starting as far back as 1989 when NASA was reporting this. And the private sector knew way back in the 1970s. So we had until around the time I was born to address this issue. I wish it didn't have to cost so much, but I'm going to turn 30 this year, and for the entire 30 years of my lifetime, we did not make substantial investments to prepare our entire country for what we knew was coming. So now it's coming all up at the end. It's like when we live our whole lives and we don't eat healthily and we don't move and we pursue unhealthy activities. And then at the end of our lives, our healthcare costs are very high. We have the choice to lower the cost now, because I can tell you the cost of pursuing a Green New Deal will be far less than the cost of not passing it. Right now, Amazon can scan your face without your consent, all of our faces without our consent, and sell it to the government, all without our knowledge, correct?
Yes.
And, Mr. Chair, I'd like to seek unanimous consent on how Amazon actually met with ICE officials over facial recognition system that could identify immigrants. I'd like to submit this to the congressional record.
Without objection.
Thank you so much. Ms. Garvey, in fact, it's not just Amazon that's doing this, right? It's Facebook, it's Microsoft, it's a very large amount of tech corporations, correct?
That's correct.
Do you think it's fair to say that Americans are essentially being spied on and surveilled on a massive scale without their consent or knowledge?
I would make a bit of a distinction between what Facebook and other companies are doing, but yielding to Ms. Buolamwini for more specifics on this. I will say most of the law enforcement agency systems operate on DMV databases or mugshot databases, so information that has been collected by agencies rather than companies.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Ferguson, one of the prime constitutional concerns about the non-consensual use of facial recognition technology is rooted or alluded to in the 14th Amendment, correct?
That's correct. It's one of them.
And right now, companies, governments, agencies can essentially steal or use your biometric data from you without your consent. And this is outrageous, right? Because this is America, and we have a right to privacy. Isn't that right, Ms. Koliani?
That's absolutely right.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Ms. Buolamwini, I heard your opening statement, and we saw that these algorithms are effective to different degrees. So are they most effective on women?
No.
Are they most effective on people of color?
Absolutely not.
Are they most effective on people of different gender expressions?
No, in fact, they exclude them.
So what demographic is it mostly effective on?
White men.
And who are the primary engineers and designers of these algorithms?
Definitely white men.
So we have a technology that was created and designed by one demographic that is only mostly effective on that one demographic, and they're trying to sell it and impose it on the entirety of the country.
So we have the Pale Mail data sets being used as something that's universal when that isn't actually the case when it comes to representing the full sepia of humanity.
And do you think that this could exacerbate the already egregious inequalities in our criminal justice system?
It already is.
Thank you very much. I yield the rest of my time to the chair.
How so?
So right now, because you have the propensity for these systems to misidentify Black individuals or brown communities more often, and you also have confirmation bias where if I have been said to be a criminal, that I am more targeted. So there's a case with Mr. Ba, an 18-year-old African-American man who was misidentified in Apple stores as a thief. And in fact, he was falsely arrested multiple times because of this kind of misidentification. And then if you have a case where we're thinking about putting, let's say, facial recognition technology on police body cams in a situation where you already have racial bias, that can be used to confirm, right, the presumption of guilt, even if that hasn't necessarily been proven, because you have these algorithms that we already have sufficient information showing fail more on communities of color.
One tin soldier rides away. So the people of the valley sent a message up the hill, asking for the buried treasure, tons of gold for which they'd kill. Came an answer from the kingdom, with our brothers we will share all the secrets of our mountain, all the riches buried there. Now the valley cried with anger, mount your horses, draw your sword, and they killed the mountain people, so they won their just reward. Now they stood beside the treasure on the mountain, dark and red, turned the stone and looked beneath it. Peace on earth was all it said. Go ahead, hate your neighbor, go ahead and cheat a friend. Do it in the name of heaven, you can justify it in the end. There won't be any trumpets blowing come the judgment day, on the bloody morning after. One tin soldier rides away.